cool room planned for you today. I appreciate seeing your faces starting to show up in the room. I appreciate you. Uh, this is Eric Campbell, your host. Let's invite my homie Psychosis on stage. So this is our Wednesday room. We are just going to give people a chance to get locked in and get set up. But we're happy to see all of you. Psychosis, what's going on? Uh-oh. Psychosis, can you hear me? Testing, testing. I don't hear you, Psychosis. Oh no, either. But I see audio. All right, I'm going to assume that you hear me, but I would like to know if Psychosis hears me, because then I know I don't have any audio problems. Um, let's see. I'm going to bring Break Page to the stage, and then I'll know if it's just Psychosis. Hey, Paige, do you hear me? Okay, I don't have audio from you guys. Let's see what's going on. Don't. Give me a sec. Let me see. I did a sound check. Uh, Psychosis, if you can hear me, flash again.
Okay, I get you now. I just restarted my app. I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. So maybe it wasn't me, but I still don't hear Paige. Do you hear Paige?
I can't hear Paige. Paige, you might have to do what I did. I had to restart my app. It just kind of tweaked out on me.
Oh wow. I wonder. So something going on with the app.
Could be because
I thought it
it
was
didn't
me.
it didn't give me like a notice, but I couldn't hear you, and I was like, yeah, that's not like Eric to just not say anything. So let me
Oh,
restart
so
it.
you
So
couldn't even
I
hear
don't know.
me.
No, I just after you invited me on stage, I couldn't hear anything you said, but I restarted it. Now we good, but
Oh, which
we get
means
it.
Paige may not be able to hear us. Um, if you couldn't hear me, she may not be able to hear us either.
Yeah, might have to send her one of those like DMs,
So when
or
you were in the
it's not called a
audience, you
DM
could
on
hear
here. What
me.
it's called.
When you
I
when
could hear you talking all the way up until you brought
till
me
you
on
got
stage,
into
and
the
then I
thing.
couldn't hear anything you said.
All right.
Yeah, so I
I'm
got
gonna
on stage, I
send
couldn't hear you.
Paige. Let me send Paige down. Paige, I'm just trying something because if you couldn't hear us when you're on stage, like Psychosis couldn't, try and go out the app and come back in because he was able to hear me afterwards. That's really weird. How are you doing, brother?
Man, I'm good, bro. Another day in the life.
Another
Trying to be
day in the
great,
life.
man. Trying to
Trying
be
to be
trying,
great.
trying to be 3, 4 people at once, but trying to make it happen.
I relate to that too well. I relate to that too well. Okay.
Hey, salute to you, man. I saw you with the 2K followers on TikTok, man.
Thank you, man. I'm actually excited. Yeah, it's crazy because it took me. Oh, we lost
Yeah, maybe it's
Breakfast.
still not working for her. I mean, she came in and out, so
Darn.
she probably
Um,
she probably experiencing what I was.
that's just crazy. Yeah, we're so pardon us, everyone. We're trying to get. We seem like we got some audio issues, or when people are being brought to the stage, they're not able to hear, or there's something going on. And so we're trying to work through that. But yeah, psychosis of my it's crazy on TikTok because it took me like a month to get from 100 followers up to 1,000, and then it took me like 5 days to get from 1,000 to 2,000. Um, and so I'm just kind of studying the growth on that. I don't think there's any set rules yet because I'm still trying. Of course you got 2,000, you want 3,000, so it's like it's really a lot of anxiety for me because I check it way too much, more than I should, and
Yeah, you addicted now,
it's
man.
like
At this
staring
point,
at
you're
my
gonna have
numbers. It's like, oh, I gained one follower. Okay, wait, did I gain 2 followers? Like that can't be healthy.
you're gonna have to make a Eric Makes Music NFT soon, man. Where it's
We're gonna see about that. We're definitely gonna see about that.
But no, that's dope, man. I'm glad to see. I know we were having that conversation last week for the people who weren't here for it, and to see that growth you had in 7 days is dope, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah. So I'm excited. So I started doing lives. Actually, I've started doing lives on there and on IG. So if anybody's following me in either of those two places, I'm trying to take the conversation to just have some more pop ups where I can just answer questions. I've been getting a lot of questions I do getting a lot of Q and A's. Once I started doing more of the TikTok, I've been getting questions over there, and a lot of we can get a little comfortable in this room because we've been talking about sync for so long. Almost a year now. It's been almost a year since Control Camp has launched, and so we have been so used to hearing this conversation that sometimes forget that there's a lot of people that are still hungry for this knowledge and don't really know how the sync works. Hey Paige, can you hear us now?
Yes,
Oh,
it's finally working.
so
I
the
was
first
like,
couple times you were up, you just didn't hear anything, huh?
no, not at all. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, I had
Odd.
just sent you a message because it did the exact same thing to me.
Yeah, that was weird.
As
I
I
was
yeah,
like, are people speaking? I was so confused.
and
You
it
know, what was
only
crazy
happened when you
was
came on
it.
stage. So Paige, were you hearing us in the audience?
I was hearing you in the audience, but when I came up on the stage, I couldn't hear anybody.
That's crazy. That's really
Yeah,
crazy.
what was real weird about it was showing your mic was muted, right? So I just thought you wasn't talking because obviously you could tell the mic was open, you weren't hearing anything, then we would know. But it showed your mic muted until I refreshed the app. So
Yeah, I don't know, being finicky.
Very, very crazy.
Technology.
But how are you doing, Paige? How are things?
Doing
How's
good,
how's
doing
work?
good.
Oh,
Been super busy, but good.
yeah, I saw. I'm gonna talk about this a little more in some of the when I talk news segments, but I read an article where someone who works at NBC Universal was saying how things are like really open up more now. And I mean, you're on more of the film side and other stuff, but how things, kind of during the height of the pandemic, a lot of productions was slowed down. But now people kind of have their processes in place, they got their testing in place, and so you're seeing a lot more movement, a lot things moving forward more, and that combined with all the other streaming outlets have just provided a lot more work than maybe what we're used to. Would you say you're seeing that in your space?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially like post, not I hate saying post pandemic because we're still in it, but post like lockdown and the shutdown kind of stuff. Everything's kind of like you said, getting back to full swing. And so it's not just all this new stuff, but it's also all the backload of stuff that they didn't release, or that they're now like finishing up shooting and wrapping. So it's been a lot more than we're used to. So it's been kind of like a constant, which is good and bad because there's a lot more opportunities to get those placements, but we have a really small team, so it's like three of us
Oh
kind
wow.
of producing everything. Um, so it's just been really, really busy. Lots of late nights.
Oh man. And prior to the pandemic, what we talk a little bit. Maybe this is I'm going to do a little introduction, but it'd be good to I like to circle back to different people, especially since we're getting some different people coming in the room, following us from different places. It'd be cool to kind of tap into a little more of your story. But prior to the pandemic, was overtime and late nights a regular thing, or is this exceptional?
I feel like in my specific field, it's a regular thing. I mean, I would say like most of our work comes in between the hours of probably 3 p.m. and 10 p.m. And a lot of it's like either overnight or they need it end of day the next day. So, because trailers work really quick. Um, a lot of times they're like in the editing bay and they need the song, for the morning so that the editor can work on it all day. And then usually they're turning it in that night or, need enough time for quick notes. So I kind of describe my job as just always being on call. um, there's obviously times where I'm like, hey guys, I can't work tonight. And we have people, everyone kind of covers each other when we, have something fun to do. But um, it's a lot of late nights. We have a team in Australia of composers that kind of do our nighttime shift.
Oh, that's y'all
Um,
really you guys intentionally set up the around the clock production. That's
yeah,
pretty dope.
I mean we have to. There's just no way we can get, we don't want to make our composers here work, until, I mean, they work all day and then work all night. It can sometimes be an issue if we get notes on the stuff that like our Australian team of composers gets, because then we have to kind of wake them up in the middle of their night to
Right, to get
finish.
clarification on other stuff. Wow.
Yes, but it doesn't happen too often, so it's kind of like, the payoff is there for them in order to want to do it, so it's not terrible. But yeah, trailers work a little bit differently because it's a very quick business and process. Like we probably take care of things most of the time within 24 to 72 hours, and then it's like off our plate and we're on
Wow.
to the next like 10.
Wow. I love this. And I'm gonna do a little intro to the room, and then I want to dive more into um, trailers, and also well, some of the news things that you're as the gamer that you are. I know you're gonna appreciate one of my news items that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm glad you're on stage for that as well. But let me say what's up to the room. You are tuned into Control Camp. We are a community of people interested in sync licensing and interested in working uh, um, in all aspects. So we're composers, songwriters, supervisors, production coordinators, and we host this room every Wednesday. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we use this to share information on our own respective insights in terms of how music works for television, for film, for trailers, for video games. And this is a kind of a place we can kind of come together, grow as a community, and we are able to kind of share our knowledge and just all learn from one another. So my name is Eric Campbell. I'm one of the hosts of this room, and I am a songwriter. I've been writing music for TV for the last 10 years. I've created music through submitted music through libraries that landed on reality shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or Love and Hip Hop and Real Housewives. I've worked on set um, for television productions like the hit show Greenleaf and for Step Up High Water. I've created music for advertisements. I've worked in a lot of different aspects of the sync space, and so as what we've been doing for almost 12 months now, it's almost been a year, is kind of creating these conversations and building a community of interested people who are interested in the space, and also bringing voices of people who actively work in the space so that you can hear multiple voices. Because what we have learned over the time is that there really isn't a singular sync licensing journey. No one can really tell you this is how you get music on TV, or this is how you get music in film, or what we can tell you is this is what has worked for me, this is what I've done, this is what my journey is, this is where this is my experience. And if you listen to my experience and you hear others, you hear Page talk, or Psychosis, or Jace, or any of the other, you hear Daraj or Steph, or any of the other voices that we have on this stage, the more uh, voices you take in, the better you're able to kind of chart the path for uh, your own journey. So we will be here for a little bit today. Just kind of, we use this time to share information and also answer questions. If you want to know more about us, you can check us out at controlcamp.com, CTRL camp.com. We're going to do a couple of cool things today. We got an announcement that we'll do a little later just about Control Camp in general as we're approaching our year and kind of the future direction of it. So stay tuned for that. We've got a brief that I think this is actually the first official brief. We do listening sessions a couple times a month, but this is the first time we actually are doing a brief. If you were here last week, we had a creative director for an LA-based agency come in and say that they needed some music, and we volunteered to use our to kind of put the brief out for him and then host the listening session here. So I'm going to talk about that as we go on a little later into the room, just how you can get details for the brief. There's no charge. It's all free. It's all available, and anybody can submit. You don't, whether you're a Control Camp member or not. So just stick around to hear those details, and we will be also covering some couple of news items and having some cool discussions. And I see Jace is on the stage. Jace Effort, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
Doing good. Good to see you as always.
Thanks for having me.
Always, always, always. All right. So before we start, people, do me a favor. If you're on your phone, that little plus sign at the very, it was two ways you can help promote this discussion. One, on that, by pinging people in. So if you hit that plus sign on the bottom of your phone, that'll bring up people that you're connected to. Go ahead and let people know that this room is going on. We appreciate that. If you appreciate the knowledge, then that's a great way to share it and let other people know, hey, some cool convo is about to go down right now, so get in here. So if everybody can ping somebody or a few people, that would be really, really appreciated. And the second way that you can help is by this new feature. If you're looking on your phone, next to the plus sign now, there should be what looks like a pair of scissors, and that's called a highlight. If you hear a, something at the end, if you hear somebody say something from this stage and you're like, oh, that was a gem, somebody should have recorded that, you can hit highlight at that moment, and it will snatch the last 30 seconds of the room, and then it'll create a nice GIF for you or audio recording, and you can post that to your social media, or you could send it to me for us to post on our social media. Some highlights would be great as we get into our topic of discussion. So pinging now, and then when you're hearing cool stuff, hitting the highlight and letting people know that, hey, because then you're letting them not just know what's going on, but you're actually sharing the audio clip and the information with more people. So that would be awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, so let's get back, Paige. Want to talk to you. I mean, you are a regular here, but I don't, I don't want to overlook in people who've come into the room or people who may have been in the room since the last time you really kind of said what you do. We know you work in the trailer world, but and so sometimes you might feel like, oh, I'm saying this again, but you know, for the people who are new, catch us up again to who you are, and I want to talk about a little more about you and trailer. So give us a little intro, Paige.
Yeah, no problem. Hey everyone, I'm Paige. I work for a company called Ghostwriter Music. We do things for all kinds of different projects, trailers, ads, etc. But we really, really focus on trailers as being kind of our main thing. I work on the custom side of things, which means that all of our briefs that come in are either creating an original piece from scratch or it's taking a song and kind of remixing or trailerizing it and making it, all the epic, cool moodiness, lots of moody covers, and just kind of, giving giving the client what they want. And I also kind of work on the producing side for some of our catalog albums. We're starting to do more artist-based stuff and things like that as well. So kind of a grab bag of things, but that's kind of the overall elevator pitch of it.
I love it. And so uh, what you could help with, because actually the creative director that came in last week, what he actually asked for was hip hop music that kind of had this cinematic, orchestral production to it, kind of that works in trailerizations or trailerized music. And you use the word trailerize. So can you um, define more for people what it means to actually trailerize a song?
Yeah, it's let's see how I think the best way to describe it is just as making something feel a little bit more like it has a momentum and a lot of like peaks and valleys. Um, a lot of songs have like a couple builds maybe here or there, and then like one really defined, the chorus is really defined and a bridge and stuff like that. When you're trailerizing something, you're really trying to highlight that stuff and make it feel kind of a bit more exaggerated, a bit bigger, and give the editor moments to cut to. So it's a lot of like, adding booms or, Brahms, things like that. Heavy like hits. If you're doing action, a lot of like percussion elements get added in. A lot of like specific sound design. It's kind of just, I would say, like spicing it up a bit, making it a little more exciting or a bit more dramatic, whatever the brief is calling for. We make a lot of like really happy songs really sad and a lot of sad songs happy. So it's kind of just giving it a bit more like oomph, a bit more like areas of, I guess, emotion and areas where it's going to hit. Also like adding stop downs and things where you have trailers and it builds up to a moment really high and then just completely drops out the music for like a line, especially in comedies. So we build a lot of that into the tracks that we compose so that an editor has a lot to work with and make it feel really exciting and or scary or whatever we're trying to go for.
I love that. If you want to hear some examples of music that has been trailerized on controlcamp.com, we have a Sync 101 page, and there are a few different Spotify playlists. And there's one that music supervisor Jess Ruwadi, who is a supervisor in the trailer space. She put together a really cool playlist of music, and so you can hear kind of what Paige has been describing. On controlcamp.com, and control is spelled like control alt delete, so CTRL camp.com, and there's a Sync 101 page, and I think towards the bottom of that you'll see a series of playlists. It's actually a cool place to just study music that has been used in TV, film, or ads in general. I think there are 3 different playlists there, but one of them is specifically for trailer music, so feel free to check that out. And let me take a minute and say hey to Timothy Andrew Edwards of PMA is here. How you doing, Tim? Or
Hey
Timothy? Do you
Eric, how's
prefer
it
Tim or
going, man?
Timothy?
Tim's cool,
How are you doing?
whatever. I'm doing okay. I just saw your room up, and I thought I'd come check it out and hang out and say hey and
We were talking
enjoying the
about you
conversation.
guys last week. There was some people in our room who were attending PMA, and so they were giving us kind of the play by play of just perspective. So
Oh,
it was
cool.
really cool. So how did it go for you?
Actually, it was kind of nuts. I did the opening panel after the first panel I moderated, and then after that I was not able to attend a whole lot of it because I that's just one organization I'm a part of, and I'm the chair of the composer advisory committee for them. But I'm also a composer, and I do music supervision as well as own a production music library. So I try and stay invested, with all different organizations that make sense to do so. But we had 2 shows last week that we had to rush to get through, so I didn't get to attend a whole lot. But I understand it was a pretty great success, and I saw some people that were there at the CSAC Film and TV Awards Thursday night. So yeah, I heard it went well.
Very
It's a good
nice.
organization. They're always interested in getting. It's a publisher. Well, it was a publisher organization initially, and then they opened up like a composer component to it, and now it's just kind of looked at as kind of a sync/industry organization instead of just being focused on just publishers or just composers. It's basically everyone in it together, which I think is kind of a cool, healthy approach. So,
Oh, very
yeah.
nice. Very nice. And Atik is
Yeah.
on stage. How are you, Atik?
I'm good, thank you. Just trying to get to an event, 30 minutes late, but
Oh, no.
yeah. So
Well, we're glad we got you for 30 minutes.
yeah. So how's it going?
It's going good. It is going cool. Were you at PMA? I know you went to a couple of different events. You were speaking with
Yeah,
different people.
I did the demo derby. I listened to people's music and gave feedback,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was cool. Yeah, Morgan
McKnight.
McKnight. Yes, she sent out the invite, so I was glad to join. But yeah, it was good. I'm a big proponent of PMA, so I try to tell people to join, especially when people want their music to be distributed or get it synced. So
I love that. That's awesome. Oh, well, I'm
yeah.
glad you're here. Glad we got you for a little bit. While you're here and while Paige is here, I want to be sure to talk about the brief that we're talking about because you both are kind of interested in this world as well. But first, let me say hey to Nicole Sanzio. Good to see you. How you doing, Nicole? Uh-oh, Nicole, can you hear us? I thought we fixed this problem.
I think it's a problem with the app because I had the same thing. I had to like leave the room and come back.
Oh, in another room that you
Um,
were in too, huh?
no, yeah, in your room
Oh,
actually.
really?
It's an app issue,
Yeah,
so
your
you
Paige,
have to leave and come back.
Paige and Psychosis both had to leave the stage and come back because they couldn't. We weren't able to hear. They weren't able to hear us, and we couldn't hear them.
I had to do that too just now.
Wow. Oh, I'm glad you're. I'm glad you can hear now, though. Were you hearing? Could you hear anything, Nicole, or you just couldn't speak?
No, as soon as I came up on stage, I couldn't hear anything.
Oh,
But
wow.
that happened to me in another room too.
Okay, so something's going on with Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Well, good to see you. How are you?
You too. Good. How are you?
Doing good. I'm feeling good. Doing all right. Um, let's all right, so while I got Atik and Paige, let me talk about the brief that we got last week, and I'll repeat it in the second half for people in the room, just so anyone can hear, because this is the one of the first briefs that we have. But last week, creative director, that's who actually does like the visuals and oversees the projects for um, this sports agency. Well, this agency in LA that they pretty much service all the major sports leagues, and so they do a lot of the hype videos. They do a lot of promotion videos for the team. They were involved with Vo Williams in one of his big campaigns with the Bucks last year, and so he was talking about one of the needs that he has right now. I mean, they need cinematic, epic um, music, but particularly right now, they're looking for hip hop that has that orchestral, cinematic, epic music. So kind of what Paige was talking about. Where now we're talking kind of with hip hop, that are based on hip hop beats and may have hip hop artists or rap over it, but you still have the big bombastic drums and the drones and the big deep subs and the heavy brass and the strings and all these things that you might hear when you check out that playlist on our site. And so we agreed to put a brief out for him, and this will be going out by email tomorrow. So if you're already on our mailing list, you'll get this. If you're not on our mailing list, when you go to controlcamp.com at the very bottom of the homepage, you can just sign up for the mailing list, and that'll keep you informed about our rooms and about opportunities like this. And so, no charges, no, you don't have to be a part of any premium thing, and you don't even have to be you don't have to be a member of Control Camp, although we hope that you are. Um, but we will be sending out an email tomorrow of where you can submit. You'll be able to submit just like the same way you submit to our listening sessions we do bi-monthly, except this time when you go to the form to fill out music, there will be a specific entry that says for sports agency brief. And so there will also be some music examples in there. I think we have like Bo Williams. We have some stuff by, I think, Alibi Music, I think their name is. And we have a bunch of different songs in there that you can kind of listen to and kind of see what kind of cinematic hip hop might be. Um, And yeah, so that's going to go out tomorrow, and then we'll be collecting songs over the next couple of weeks, and look to have an actual listening session with the agency, and hopefully some of our own like trailer people and sports folks will be available, so we can have a nice panel that will be both talking about what works in that space, but also we'll be sharing other things that have you'll be able to analyze other music that works, and then be able to play some of the selections that you submitted, the ones that really fit the bar. So if you want to receive that and you're not already on our mailing list, then go to controlcamp.com. At the bottom of the page, you'll be able to join the mailing list, and that will go out tomorrow. And then we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks, because we'll be collecting songs for. I think we're looking at doing the listening session probably around that first week of November, but I'll keep you posted about that. So we got a couple of weeks to turn things in, and then we'll host a listening session. And even if you don't do cinematic hip hop, because this is such a specialized field, it's really advantageous to just listen to the music that's involved, and just anthemic stuff in general, epic type in general is a big area. And so learning some of the nuances from a composer perspective, from even from an artist perspective, because some of the artists who do this may not be normally doing cinematic stuff. Psychosis can speak to this. They may have been doing hip hop and then brought into more cinematic type projects, and finding a way to do what you do, but still do it in this epic space is probably a little bit of a shift. Would you say that, Psychosis?
Yeah, I think. I mean, even before you go from to cinematic, I think when you go from me, some people, they work specifically in sync and they write songs and they are thinking with sync in mind. Me, I'm thinking about my artistry first, and I'm thinking about my quote unquote fan base and what they generally like first. So going from that to thinking about, okay, this verse or this whole song needs to be clean, or that it needs to be not as specific to make it for sync. That's one train of thought. And then I think going to cinematic is like another level. It's like you graduate to a different train of thought of seeing yourself or seeing the song, over your favorite film, or, opening night, or that superhero scene where they punch the ground when they land. Like thinking about how your lyrics, I think for a hip hop artist, think about how my lyrics and delivery would be matched to that scene. So for me, it's kind of like, it's exciting because I get to like play a character in a way when I'm making music for cinematic, and just be like, I'm gonna be a superhero in the superhero movie. I'll just be the one, making the song. So it's definitely a different train of thought and a different delivery system.
I love that. Um, Now, Atik, from where you sit with the NFL, do you find is that something that you find that your organization uses, the epic cinematic stuff? I know you use a lot of hype stuff, but what about the epic cinematic stuff?
Yeah, we definitely do for some, music videos. If you watch some of our shows, when we cut opens or the game opens, we definitely use cinematic, epic opens. Like, uh, yeah, yeah, we definitely use it for sure. But we don't use it the same way that you would in a movie. But we sort of use it as trailerized version to tell our story.
Yeah, you know what? Interesting. I would love to get your feedback on something.
If you watch,
No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, if you watch like Thursday night football on our network, you'll see these like game opens, we call them, and they tend to be grand and epic. Like tell a story. Yeah,
I love that.
so we definitely use that type of music for sure.
So something you just said reminded me of something that this creative director said, and he said that what surprised him, he had shared an album with me that he had been pitching to some of their clients, and he actually found that some of the feedback he got, it was really good cinematic epic music, like everything we've been talking about, like really good lyrics, real uh cinematic epic, really big music production, really well mixed, and all the stuff you might hear in like a movie trailer, but kind of put the hip hop beats and really well done. But he said the problem that he was having with some of his clients, and this I think this might be unique to sports as opposed to like the movie trailer world. Um, some of his clients felt like the lyrics were too braggadocious, too a little too cocky, and they kind of pushed back against it. Like they wanted more things that were like talking about self determination and overcoming, but not kind of like the all attitude, which was interesting to me because if you from hip hop, like that's what hip hop is. Hip hop is, that's embedded in the culture of the music. Kind of bragging is part of it. And so if you take that bragging side of hip hop and then say make it epic, then naturally you're going to get that even like on steroids. And so that was real interesting to me that you would think for sports that they would want kind of that bragging would that competition would go hand in hand. But he said he really had a hard time pitching that, and people say, well, "Okay, we like this music, but can we get maybe some of the attitude turned down, or can we get some rewrite on some lyrics that are a little more like overcoming and you know."
Yeah, see, I can totally see that where the other supervisor was coming from, right? Like, because especially for us, we're a team sport, so you don't want that individual, like, this person's bigger than the sport itself or the team itself. So I could see that for sure. I don't think we would use that either if it was too braggadocious or too, like, me, if that makes any sense.
I would have never. I mean, it was hearing you say it, it makes sense, but I would have never considered it or thought about it.
Yeah, it would work for, like, if like Floyd Mayweather was fighting, or if like that's their personality, right? Very individual, very selfish, very like braggadocious. But in team sports, that doesn't really work.
I love the insight. That's why I love these conversations. And so now, Paige, where you said, I think, do you serve both, like the movie trailer side as well as sports side, or are you more heavily focused on one than the other?
Yeah, we work with all kinds of different things. Like we've done theme songs before. So we've worked with a couple like just brands, and then we've done a few things for sports side. Actually, we pitch an album that we did with Daraj quite a bit, and it's landed a few placements within like the NHL space. Which what Daraj did for us is kind of like that. What he does a lot is exactly those like hip hop epic beats that feel like that like sizzle
Exactly.
to sports stuff. And we get this brief, like that specific brief is a brief that we get maybe every other week.
Wow, really?
People wanting, and not just in that space, like HBO, all of their promos, if you've heard them recently, a lot of them are from like one of our albums, which is all exactly that, which is just like hip hop neoclassical kind of vibe. So we get a lot of like wanting the hip hop beats with either like a dramatic string neoclassical flair or hip hop beats with like that epic like trailer drums, ramp it up game time kind of flair. So it's a brief that we hear a lot, like the trailerized hip hop, whatever they're looking for.
We use a lot of that too, like what Paige said.
Yeah.
Daraj sent me something that I listened to, and I was like, oh, this could actually be bigger. Think bigger and just build and then build it bigger. Like sometimes
I hear
those
that.
things.
That's like I've been on a couple of different not as a judge, but more like listening to a couple of different trailer supervision panels, and that was the most common feedback was, oh, this is great, it just needs to be bigger. Like it was like exactly right, now bigger. Like,
Yeah. That's what we look for. That's what I mean when I'm looking for something. I'm definitely like looking for that really the big build, and then just for it to just explode, like, because here's the thing about sports TV and the way that I don't know if I've talked about this, but like when I was cutting content, right, like we didn't really have a lot of real estate. Like we have the game footage, we might have NFL films footage, we have the play-by-play, and you've got music, right? And if you're lucky, you can get your you can write a script and have them read over, right? But really what music does is music for us like really pushes the narrative and it allows us to use very little real estate in being able to get the audience to care about what we're trying to say with that, you know? So like we have these music videos that lead into segments, or the game opens that lead into like, hey, it's Thursday Night Football and here we are, you know, and just get people hyped. So that's how, if you think about it, music has to tell you a story, and it really drives the audience to where you want to go. So that's how I look at it. It's just it's an asset that we use, especially because we have limited real estate in being able to tell our story in a very short period of time, like 30 to 45 seconds. You know, we've got this music video, and you want it to be like epic and fast and like moving, and you want to get to the point. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I've always like listened to music, is like, hey, if I'm cutting this video on like this game, you know, this matchup, like what do I want? And I want to be able to tell this story, because no one's narrating. For the most part, it's like these radio calls, these play-by-play calls, and I don't have a narrator to narrate, to tell the audience how to feel or think, right? So music does that for you.
That is awesome. I see you, Paige.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, actually something that I could probably share with you, Eric, and you can post somewhere, but the album that we actually did with Daraj, it was a collaboration where we set him up with, we actually took like the stuff that he did and then paired him with a couple of our trailer composers to give it that like element of go bigger, go with that trailer thing. So he did a collaboration with some of our like top trailer composers, and then they made basically a trailerized version of Daraj's songs. So like he sent us the work, and then we trailerized it and then released it as an EP, and it's on our Spotify, so it might be good reference for people to listen to kind of hear what we're talking about. That is an album that up on our Spotify.
If you go to Spotify and look up Ghost, it's just Ghostwriter, not Ghostwriter Music on Spotify, right? It's just Ghostwriter, all
I
one word.
think it's just Ghostwriter. We like never use our Spotify.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Because actually, I think in the playlist I mentioned, I think we have some of his songs. Well, I know we have some of his songs, but I think we have some of his songs from that project on.
Yeah,
on
it's called Art of War.
Yeah, it's a great project.
But yeah, so I feel like for like something that's super hype, that's a really good reference to look at if you're, and I think that's like kind of the sports world, I think, lives more in that space than it does like the neoclassical stuff. But the neoclassical stuff's coming back kind of hard. Like a lot of people are asking for neoclassical like strings with hip hop. So
interesting. I haven't. I'm gonna have to look up some of those, because I don't think I've heard some of the neoclassical, but I'm all for that, because that's a really cool sound. That's pretty dope. All right. So once again, like, if you want to know more information about that, make sure you're on our mailing list, the Control Camp mailing list, which you can only get on by going to controlcamp.com, and then on our homepage, there is actually at the very bottom of the screen is, you know, a form you fill out that says, "Hey, I want to be on the Control Camp." This is different from my newsletter, the Sync Journal, other things. This is, you know, you access this from the Control Camp homepage, and we'll send out an email with more details about that. And then Paige and Atik, I'd love, once we get closer, I'd love to let you know when we're going to schedule it, because it'd be great to have your ears in the room as well, just for giving people feedback and insight and perspective. Do you, either one of you, do you have any? I mean, this is for the whole panel. Does anybody have any briefs or things that they're looking for right now that they want to share with the room, or have any outstanding things they're looking for?
I mean, anyone who can do like good 90s hip hop beats.
Oh, really?
That's, yeah, a lot of ad spaces are looking for that kind of hip hop right now. But they're not looking for songs, because they just kind of want it in the background. So more of just like the beats style, but stylized from the hip hop that was coming out in the 90s. So like 90s hip hop, R&B.
Nice. Oh,
kind
you
of
know,
stuff.
we can pull some of that together for you, Paige. That's pretty dope.
Yeah.
we can get we can I'll include that in the thing, and then we can keep we'll keep talking about that. 'Cause the trick with that, and I'm interested in what you found. I think the trick with that is getting producers who know how to make things sound sample without using samples, or make things sound like loops without actually using real, real loops or anything that's questionable, but still know how to get that retro official sound. And so that's really cool. I'm actually always excited about those kind of briefs. And you said not songs though, just instrumentals.
Just instrumentals for us. So what we do, like, we wouldn't be able to pitch someone else's music really unless they publish with us. So we're always looking for kind of what people can do, whether it be like on the production side or composing side, or if they're an artist, if they also are like a session player or vocalist. We use a lot of those people on our customs. And then, for future albums that we want to release under our like publishing house kind of thing, we work a little differently. It's not like an actual, like it's a very specific thing that we'd have to go into, but because of what we do, it's not like we don't really pitch around other people's music. It's just through us. But we're always looking for people that are interested in the space that we can collaborate with in the future on an album, like specifically that'll be released through Ghostwriter, and then then we'll be pitched with all of our other albums and be in our catalog.
That's great. I love that. Awesome, awesome. Oh, cool. I'm glad I asked that. Glad I asked that question. Um, Oh, so while Paige is still here, so let me switch gears. I actually haven't done like a news item in a while because things have just been so busy. I haven't actually been able to pay as much attention to sync news recently, but there are a couple of cool things. Well, a couple of things of note, I should say. They're not necessarily cool, but they're things of note. And since Paige is a gamer, I think she would appreciate this one. But I came across the obituary for Koichi Sugiyama, who is the composer of Dragon Quest. And so, and just the obituary itself, he passed away on September 30th, so just a little bit ago. But you know, 90 years old, and is considered kind of one of the leading composers in in modern Japan, and some consider him the master of video game music. And his obituary is just really insightful. And one insightful about him, his story, and just some insight. We haven't really talked much on the video game music side, and so hearing this Japanese composer's story provides a little bit of insight into how some things in this world work. So I'm going to read a little bit of the obituary just to share, and then we can kind of move on from there. But I want to share this because it's really good. All right, think back to the opening ceremony at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Many people can probably still hear the Dragon Quest song, composed by Koichi Sugiyama, being played loudly during the athletes' parade. The Flaxen Haired Maiden, Fugue of Love, and Horse Race Fanfares, these are just some of the classics composed by Sugiyama, who passed away on September 30th at the age of 90 years old. In more recent years, the composer became known as the master of video game music. Without a doubt, though, he was one of the leading composers of modern Japan. Born in Shitaya in Tokyo's Taito Ward in 1931, Sugiyama grew up in a home where everyone loved music. In the 60s and the 70s, he used elements of Western, classical music, and pop songs, shaking up the music world of the day. He produced music across a variety of fields such as commercials, anime, and special effects. In total, he wrote thousands of songs. Sugiyama started writing the music for Dragon Quest in his mid 50s. After sending his feedback on a PC shogi game to a production company, he went to work writing the music for the original version of Dragon Quest, which went on sale in 1986. The game evolved into a hugely popular series, attracting many fans globally, and has come to represent Japan. Sugiyama spent more than 30 years involved in Dragon Quest music and help raise the profile of video game music, which was initially looked down on. In an interview in 2016, the composer spoke about the importance of producing catchy songs. Quote, video game music is repetitive, and the user listens to the music for long periods of time. Therefore, you have to compose songs which don't have to be sophisticated, but which never get boring. End quote. And it goes on. You can find, if you want to hear more about it, if you Google Koichi, Koichi, Sugiyama, which is spelled Sugiyama, Koichi Sugiyama obituary. You can see the rest of the story, but a couple of things that just really stood out to me. One, you have someone who um, has been primarily doing um, video game music and has done it so prolifically that they use his orchestrations, or that his orchestrations get performed by world famous orchestras, and even included in the 2020 opening, the opening of the 2020 games, which I think is uh, pretty awesome. And that he's been involved with this one franchise since its founding up until the time of his death. I also think that is just amazing. Paige, is this a game that you've ever played or familiar with?
I'm familiar with it, but I have not played it.
Yeah.
But I do know what it is. And I do know that song, the overture that was used in the Olympics. It is very great piece of
Yeah,
work.
I was listening to it today. It's really awesome.
But one thing I like about most video game composers, and something you mentioned, is the games itself kind of take on a specific sound. So if they're making, obviously more than one, it's almost like, it's the same kind of thing as having, John Williams compose something for, these epic legacy films. And it's like these games have a specific sound, or even like The Last of Us has like such a specific sound with the acoustic guitar, like Spanish style guitar that Gustavo plays. And it's like, that's I think that's one thing where like video games are starting to move more into that cinematic space for sure, of having kind of these bigger composers that are very well known now.
I love.
Last of Us 2, great video game ever.
So good.
I was gonna say that thing that from the article that stuck out to me was that like his philosophy was like these people are playing for such a long time. You want it to like not you don't want to get tired of the song. So like that thoughtfulness of like, hey, these people are gonna play for a long time, and you don't want them to be like, oh man, I'm tired of this, like that, like just that little thing of like it being simple, but also being able to listen to it over and over and over again without being like, I hate this piece of music, that little bit of thoughtfulness that he had, like, hey, these people are playing this game, and it shouldn't be something that's whatever the quote was, but
I can't, like, how it sounds so simple, but making something which sounds like, because he said it should be, doesn't have to be sophisticated, but it should never get boring. Like, I would
yeah,
never
exactly.
approach something like that. Like, make something that people can listen to for 2 hours and not get bored with, but don't make it too complex.
Yeah, exactly. And just even thinking of it from the space that we come from, right? Like ours is like, oh, it's got to be like loud and it builds and it explodes and you're like, it's in your face. And then to be able to just subtly play this, and have it live, for however long you're playing that game, however long it takes to beat a game these days. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that really was inspiring to me. And so that was that makes a lot of sense, page 2, about how a game gets its own sound, and therefore, if you're the composer for that game, you it becomes your sound, and then you're kind of the steward of that. So really cool insight. We would definitely want to get more people from this space in this industry. That's one conversation that we really haven't had in Control Camp, is more insight from the gaming industry, and I'm personally very just curious about um, how things like that work. So very cool. It's time for a reset yet? Almost.
I have the Mario Brothers theme song stuck in my head now.
That's a forever classic. Got Ian on stage. E.
You know,
Oh, go ahead, Psychos.
it's funny I'm about to say, it's funny you mentioned that because my actual introduction into sync actually came from video games. Like, it wasn't my first placement, but it was the first time I thought about, as an artist, my songs could be used in another way other than just being on radio and going a traditional artist route. Because, like, for example, a video game franchise like NBA 2K has made it their business to pick both signed and unsigned artists and then place their songs as part of the soundtrack to the game that continuously updates, and they focus on hip hop. So it was like a big deal for me to see, like, I knew an artist who got a placement on NBA 2K, and it was like, wow, that's a thing you can do. Like, it's not often brought up in a space like TV and film, but I think is definitely a very important space for that reason.
Psychosis, you bring up a really great point that I've actually talked to like some people, artists, about, is like, you got to think beyond just what you're doing right now, right? You got to think long term. You got to think like, hey, that if there's ever an opportunity to get my music synced elsewhere, right? Like, you got to, I think a lot of people just have that myopic view of like, oh, I gotta release this song as a song and it has to be that, but they don't think about these other potential revenue streams, right? Like, for me, it's like important, like, hey, don't get caught up in the moment. Think long term with your music that you're creating. Where can it, 10 years down the line, where could it land? Where could it go? You know, you never know. That for me is like kind of important to pass on, is like, think just beyond the moment of what's going on in music.
I agree 100%. It's actually something I've been talking to some other audiences just about. I mean, my own personal story, like, you know, I think for a lot of songwriters, producers, artists, many of us, we only grew up knowing one side of the industry, and that's the major label industry. And so, me as a songwriter, producer, and when I focused on writing songs, then my path was artist placements. That's what I wanted. I wanted to get hit records with big artists, and that was that was what I pursued. So when I moved to Atlanta, something like 15 years ago now, when I moved to Atlanta, that's all I was pursuing, was trying to being in the studio every night, all night, putting demos together, shipping them off to this A&R and that A&R, and just trying to get a song placement one way or the other. And after a few years of kind of like not really getting good traction, I got one placement, but I was hoping for bigger and more. And after a few years of that, I got shown sync, it's kind of shown this as a path that your music can also be on TV, or your music can also be on advertisements. And it's not something I considered. And only once I started hearing about that, and then really stopped and like started paying attention, and really looking at the commercials that I was watching, and like, oh, there's music behind there, or looking at the reality shows and saying, oh, there's music in the background, there's music between scenes, or in a commercial building and riding the elevator, and there's like, oh, there's music playing here, or in Target there's music playing, and like on the airplane there's music playing, and somebody's paying for all that music. And so having my eyes opened up to that, music is actually exists in a lot of industries outside of the major entertainment. The music entertainment industry was really eye-opening for me. It's the difference between, I don't know what the sports analogy is, but it's almost like if all your life you only know the NBA, and then you realize, oh, there's coaching in college, and there's playing in Canada, and there's playing in the European League, and there's being on the Olympics team, and there's other countless professional and semi-professional teams that you can go in, that you don't just have to try and get one out of 30 slots that a million people are trying to go for. There's other areas that actually pay a decent living that you can do.
Yeah, and it's something that you bring up, right? And I think it's, for me, it's personally, I can relate to this, is because when I told my parents I didn't want to be an engineer anymore and that I wanted to work in sports, they like freaked out, and they were like, what are you going to do? You never played sports. there's no future for you. But the thing is that they didn't realize you could do all these other things. You could, you can work for the network, you can work for, so like people aren't unaware of all the opportunities that exist within a given field because they're never exposed to it, right? Like, so, one of the things that we're doing in Inglewood is we've got this sports lab, which we're teaching kids how to, broadcast the game. We're teaching them the different positions. Then we've got this other thing that we're doing called with the Sound Academy. So to teach these kids that there's other opportunities for you that exist beyond just making music or beyond being an athlete. That there's other ways for you to be involved in the things that you're passionate about.
I love that.
Thank God, Atik, that you went your own path, man, because especially those kids in Inglewood need to see and realize, and I think that's what makes Control Camp and what we're doing here so important. Besides just being a social media thing that we get to talk to people, a lot of people in this industry don't realize how big of an impact this education has on these communities, especially communities of color who just don't have all these barriers to entry to get in these fields. And seeing somebody like you or Eric or Paige or all other people that are doing this and teaching them a path to get there, and then showing them that oftentimes, hey, you guys already have the skill, you just didn't know you need to do X, Y, and Z, or here's the business way you approach it. That makes a huge impact. So that's tremendously important, man. I'm proud of you.
I most definitely, and I'm not the only one, right? There's other people that saw the same thing that were part of the community that do work for the NFL that were like, we want to improve the community that we're in. I'm just trying to support it in whatever way possible, right? I'm not doing anything great, man. I'm just trying to be supportive. That's all I'm doing. But like, there's so many other people that care about the community that we live in and that we're trying to be a part of, and we want to improve it. Like, for me, like I've told you, Psychosis, we're doing these community gardens, which is really important because Inglewood is considered a food desert. So like whatever you can to like expose kids to other things other than what they know, right? Because you never know. Like some kid could be like, I want to be a horticulturist or whatever. So just getting exposure and unfortunately communities of color, especially black communities, don't have those opportunities to see what exists for them, right?
Yeah, man, and that's why I said, like, of course there's the trope in the saying that music brings us together, but I think it's really bigger than a lot of people realize, because music is a way we tell the story of our culture, right? So it's a way we tell the story of both us as individuals, but our culture and everybody and everything that ever influenced us comes out in this music and what we know and what we do. And for some people, they can make a living off of this and become, some of those few people. But also, they got all these other fields, as you mentioned. In sports, you didn't have to put on the shoulder pads and be in the NFL. You had all these other ways. So even in music, people who love music, there's all these other roles and all these other jobs to do very important things, like what Paige is doing. Like connecting people and placing the right song and figuring it out. Like all these ways people connect the dots. That education, that exposure, and those possibilities are huge.
And that's not to say that at some point you can't take everything that you learned and create your own art, right? Like that's not, that too. If you want to be an artist, you may not get the numbers or whatever, but if you want to put art out in the world, you'll have all the tools and know how to do it. Like that's another part of it that I think about. Like, hey, this would be really good for them.
Just so powerful. I'm so glad you shared that. Atik. Paige, were you trying to jump in before I did the reset? I don't want to overlook you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add to that in the sense of, I think when we're talking, in this space of passing it along and really, nourishing this space, we really need to talk about kind of making sync just as important as, the artist side of things. I don't think people really, obviously want a number one hit on the billboards. That's obviously, a big goal, and that's, an incredible goal. But I think, we can't underestimate the small placements. We can't underestimate like getting a song on Tony Hawk, because let me tell you, I know exactly every song on Tony Hawk. And I can tell you where, when it comes on the radio, I don't go, oh, that's so and so. I say, oh, that's the song from Tony Hawk. So just having this idea of like kind of humbling yourself a bit, because I do think like sync placements are just as important or incredibly important, however small they are, because they're going to have an impact on someone, whether it's someone playing a video game or listening to an ad. And you know, there have been many artists who have blown up from a sync placement, just getting, you know, one placement. But I think, you know, never like think about all the different ways you can use your artistry. Being a vocalist, playing a specific instrument, those are all needed, you know, separately as well. So being able to kind of like think about all the art that you do, and you know, as an artist, and think about each different step, because each of those different steps could be a step to something else. And so I think thinking about it in a sense of like being able to use all your tools and learn all these tools and want to, and put as much importance in those as in your, you know, biggest goals, that'll just do you better.
That's great. I've mentioned this in this room page, but there's a video game, and don't judge me for this. There's a video game called Drug Dealer Simulator, and one of my biggest sinks is I have 3 songs in this video game where it's literally like The Sims, but except building houses, you're selling dope. Look, like, don't judge me, like I said. Anyway, point is, because of that video game, so many people who played the game just for shits and giggles went to Shazam and found me through playing my songs in the game because they stood out to them in the game. So not just a game, but same thing happens if I get a sync placement on someone's YouTube channel who has influencers. So everybody in this room, of course, we're all hoping we can get in, the next Marvel trailer or a blockbuster film. But it's not always about shooting for the home run. Like, there's other ways we can get placements. And that song, which is called Worship, got over 1 million streams specifically from having YouTube and that Drug Dealer Simulator game sync. So it's a lot of ways to get there. And it's not just one way to do it, as Eric always says.
I love that. That is so, yeah. So many opportunities within sync, and just being aware of it. I mean, by the major industry rules, I never went to be an artist. I always knew that I could do production and writing for other people, but it was always going to be for other people. I never saw myself as being like the singer or lead vocalist or anything on the song. I was always kind of, playing the background. But then in the sync world, sync has allowed me to actually sing on records, rap on records that actually made it or landed or used in TV shows. And now I have things out there that have my vocals on it. I would have never done that if I was pursuing I mean, in sync, you don't have to worry about your image. You don't have to worry about having the video right. You don't have to worry about if you got the wardrobe. You really could just make a great song and put it out there, and your song might end up landing someplace, with your vocals on it, and people shazamming and saying, "Who's that?" And then you might have to scramble and put your Spotify stuff together. But the opportunities to just I mean, if you're like me and like you don't want to just be one thing, you don't want to just make hip hop music or just sing pop songs, and you might want to try rock stuff. Like, you could play around and just be whatever character you want. This particular world allows for that. It allows for you to make, you know, oh, I think I'm gonna do some cinematic hip hop this week, or I think I'm gonna work on some singer songwriter folk. Whereas if you're an artist, you have to worry about continuity and branding and that type of stuff. You don't have that same those same barriers in the sync world. Now, there are lanes in sync because everybody's journey is not the same. There are lanes in sync where your artistry is more important. Sometimes pitching is, if you want to pitch yourself to a sync agent, then they might be more concerned about you as an artist, and that then goes back to what are you doing in social media, what kind of branding looks like, what your image looks like, and all that. But there's other lanes where that's not a concern or an issue or even a question. So many opportunities in this space, and I'm really grateful to have found it. Let me do a quick reset. I know we lost a T because he said he was going to an event, but let me do a quick reset and welcome our two new guests to the stage, and then start some discussion for our second half. Even though we've gone over the 9 o'clock, but if you're in here, this is Control Camp, CTRL, like Control Alt Delete. Control Camp. We are a community that brings all aspects of the sync licensing community together. This is people who are interested in or work in the space of writing music for television, film, video games, advertisements, etc. We hold this space at least once a week, uh, on usually on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. starting at 8 p.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. Pacific, and we kind of share our experiences as people who are working in different aspects of syncs. Right now, there's 5 people on the stage, and none of us have the same story, and none of us do the exact same work, and that's kind of the beauty of this space. And so we try to bring a variety of voices here so you can get exposed to people who do this but may have a journey that you might not be familiar with. And as we share our individual stories, that may give you information and education and inspiration to find your own way to getting your music licensed on television or used in sync or working for a brand or one of the many other ways that music can be used in this space. If you want to know more information, you can check out controlcamp.com. Just some quick recaps. Stick around, stay here. I do have an announcement I'm making in a little bit about kind of the future of Control Camp and where we're going. We talked in the first half about a brief that we received from a Los Angeles-based um, a sports agency that creates video productions for all the major sports leagues, and they are looking for cinematic hip hop. We talked about that during the first hour, kind of hip hop with kind of orchestral or more electronic, kind of big bombastic cinematic. You can hear some of that on our website. But if you want to know more about this brief, we'll be collecting songs for this agency over the next couple of weeks, and then do a listening session with them probably the first week of November. Make sure you are signed up to the Control Camp mailing list. So if you go to controlcamp.com, scroll to the bottom of the whole homepage, just make sure that we have your email address on file. Tomorrow, I'll be sending the brief out with some reference songs so that you can hear, and a link that you can submit music to be considered for that listening session and for that pitch. And let's see if there was something else that I missed. We will not be doing an after party today. If you're a regular here, you know usually on Wednesdays after our main discussion, we would do an additional hour and a kind of an after party that's only open to people who are Control Camp members. Usually in that room, we don't talk about music. It's just our time to kind of socialize, and it's usually really good socializing. We get to know one another. We get to really form some good bonds, and that's always can lead to good opportunities. So we try to always have this space where we do kind of formal talking, and then we also have a space where we just really kind of anybody comes on stage and we just kind of chit chat, but we're not able to do that today. I actually have a brief that I need to return back to working on once this convo is over, so it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy night for me. So we will come back Sunday. Well, you'll check in the email. I don't know if we're doing a listening session this Saturday, but we might. But if you were here Sunday, we kicked off a cool new room as this was Film Score Sundays. I had a conversation with me and Emmy Award winning composer Matthew Head. He is the producer and composer on the hit series on Stars called P Valley. He was the producer for Greenleaf, the TV show on Lionsgate and OWN network. He was did the music for Step Up High Water, some really cool documentaries, including the PBS series The Black Church, and the Mahalia documentary he was the composer for. And he is the producer on the upcoming show called Queens, which stars Brandy, the rapper Eve, and Naturi Naughton's really, really sounds like a really amazing show that launches, I think, in 2 weeks. And so he and I on Sundays, we started working together years ago on the show Greenleaf. He brought me onto the show as a vocal producer and songwriter, and we've been friends ever since. And we've been talking for the last couple of months, just he and I, because I've tried to convince him to write a book. And as I just think his story is so phenomenal. He is an accomplished composer who did not get like formally trained in music in the traditional ways. He didn't go into the big schools that a lot of us know, and he built his relationships very organically and built his skills organically. He um, worked he was on Twitter responding to every independent film composer with no budget who needed a short film scored, and he was like, "I'll do it." And just if you look at his IMDb page, there's credit pages and pages and pages of short film credits, and he did that until he got bigger attention and started getting asked to do bigger shows, and now he has multiple Emmys and other awards. And so I think his story is amazing. So on Sundays, what we were doing was he and I were talking on Zoom, and I would just try to go through his filmography and get the stories behind it so that we could work on a book together. I think he should have a book. And so I kind of convinced him to do that. And in the last week, he was like, these conversations are really good. Let's take this to Clubhouse. And so we did the first one this past Sunday. We'll be coming back hopefully again this Sunday. It's always it's always iffy because he sometimes gets called away at the last minute into a scoring session, and so we shoot for trying to do it every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You kind of just have to pay attention to my stories. Make sure you turn notifications on. I'll go live too beforehand to let people know, so you can turn my notifications on and my IG, and that'll keep you posted. But we go when we meet on Sundays, we kind of share his scoring process. Also, we share his business development process. He's been really good about building organic relationships, a lot of them through Twitter and DMs. And so we talk about in this room, if you're ever interested in how do you effectively reach out to people, on DM or on LinkedIn or IG, we talk about that a lot. So catch us on Sundays when we're there, ideally 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, let's continue. First, let me say what's up to Ian, who came up to the stage. How you doing, Ian?
Hey, good,
Very,
Eric. How are you
very
doing?
good. Good to see you. Actually, you probably have some insight um, into the whole discussion we were having before about sync versus major industry because you've had experience in both, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like my background's mostly album work, but I do a lot of mixing for one of the bigger production libraries as well, and then a couple of things for games and odds and ends
So
like that.
is more sharing more of your story. Are you your profile says you're a mixer, producer, and engineer. Do you do evenly all those, or do you do one more than any of the others, or how does that work?
I mostly mix. I spend a fair bit of time engineering. I mostly mix, and I'll produce here and there when the right
Nice,
project comes along.
which is cool because then as a mixer, you get to see everything. You get to see like you said, the major albums, and you get to see the production music library projects and um, you know sync things, animated stuff. So you get to get access. You get access to different sides of how the industry works. I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
from
Where are
each
you
side.
based?
I'm
Nice.
in Toronto.
And then do you do how as a mixing engineer, kind of with the pandemic and everything, is your studio like a remote studio, and so your clients are all over, or do people come to you on location?
You know what's funny? Like, not all that much has changed during the pandemic for me, really. Like back in the days when everything was on a big desk and it takes a lot of time to recall things and all that kind of stuff, a lot more people attended. And kind of over the years, sort of, that's been less and less. And, maybe in the last few years, people might just kind of come in for recalls, if anything at all. And yeah, so it really I've just been doing everything remotely. Not, the only thing that's changed is that I haven't been doing any tracking sessions in person. But the mix stuff really hasn't changed much at
That is
all.
great. I mean, it's so cool to have a skill set that is in demand and can be done remotely. And how do new? I can imagine the clients that you've had. Like it's no big deal for them because they know your sound, they trust you. How do new clients feel about handing over a session and kind of seeing what comes back and then not maybe not being as involved in the process as if they were there in person?
I mean, most people seem to be okay with it. I think it's just kind of the age that we're in, where people are used to people that they're collaborating with kind of being anywhere. Yeah, I don't think it's really phased anybody.
I love that. That is great. Really, really cool. Awesome, awesome. Okay. Well,
Thanks.
thanks so much for being here, and we appreciate you always stepping up and sharing. Let me say what's up to Matt, Matt Moss. Matt, have you been on our stage before? Or why do I think not?
Don't believe so. I think this is my first
Cool.
time,
Nice to
Eric.
meet you. How you doing?
Yeah, you too. Doing
Cool.
pretty
Yeah, I saw
good.
your bio. Take if you don't mind, let's. Why don't you introduce yourself? I see we connected some similar people, and you've got some cool stuff happening. So you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Matt Moss, and I've been, I guess, writing and producing for Sync for the last 12 years. And I liked how you were talking about earlier. Just there's so many different facets. You can even start to wear different hats in the Sync world when you're not just focused on being an artist and trying to sell just one particular brand. And that's kind of how I started because I played bass in a band in my early 20s on the road. And when I got off the road, I live in a small town in Louisiana, and I said, I still want to be in the music industry. I like to record. I can produce a little bit. So I just started learning other instruments, and I started, creating instrumentals and going to music conferences in California just to find out how and what and where and why, about sync, and cues and instrumentals for film and TV because I know that I didn't feel comfortable singing or writing lyrics at the time. So kind of started there, and it just, like you were saying, you can start and be, efficient and become proficient in certain genres and you pitch yourself as that. But then as time goes on, you can really explore all different kinds of things. And then when you start to co-write, it really just opens up a world to see what can come out, and diving into another style can always be helpful if you go and co-write with someone that is already familiar with that. So it was just kind of like a rising ship. I started kind of from nothing, and then I got to where I've had like multiple placements with multiple genres, and some being solely written by me, and some co-writes, and it's been a really cool journey though, and the most powerful part about it is just the networking, the people that I've met. Because without the people I've met, I would be nowhere. Because you meet people that are where you're at. Some people are a little farther along, and some people are behind you, and you help the ones, and you help others, and they help you. That's kind of how it all works. that
I
I've
love
found.
that, Matt. And
Um,
yeah, our stories sound similar, so it's really, really cool to hear your perspective. And I feel the same way in terms of community. Like, I haven't done enough in the major label industry to compare, but just the relationships that I've built in sync all across the board, from composers and from people who are just curious about it, people who work in the space. Like, I love that I have what I consider to be real friends in this industry, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate even about this room. I just think our community is one of our as it as an industry, our sense of community is one of our strongest assets. Even when I went to the Durango Music Conference for the first time in person in February of 2021, and not even from just amongst us who are aspiring or who work in the space, but looking at the supervisors themselves and just seeing, like, it was like this genuine connections that they just had with each other. And at the same time, there's still this openness to engage with all the attendees who are coming. Like, it's something, like I said, I don't know that I've seen it from my outside view of attending other conferences and other parts of the industry, but it's something I really do appreciate. So I'm glad you shared that.
Oh, well, thanks for
Most
having me up.
definitely. Matthew Wang, a regular, is here. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Just mixing a couple cues and getting some stuff off to a dub in a
Oh,
couple days. But
cool.
yeah,
Nice.
it's good to be
Always
here.
nice to have you. Nice to have you. Uh,
Yeah, I really loved the Sunday
oh, thank you.
talk.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Matt
was
referenced
great.
you a couple times.
Everyone could
I
go.
think you might have had to step out by then, but he mentioned he actually referred to you a couple times in the convo. So yeah, we're gonna be doing that every Sunday if we as much as we can. We're gonna try and do it every Sunday as long as his schedule permits. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, let's see what is on the schedule that I'm supposed to be talking about for the next portion. Ooh, there was something I was going to ask you, Paige. Yeah. So we talked in the first half. We talked about Paige's a little more of Paige's story. And one question I wanted to just double back to, Paige, with all that you've worked on, do you have a favorite sync of this year so far? Do you have something that either that you guys have worked on or just a sync that you've seen somewhere else? Do you have a favorite or something that just really stands out to you?
Okay. Well, the one that I will probably my favorite is coming up, but it
Oh, so you can't talk about it
hasn't
yet because it
landed
hasn't
yet.
landed.
But can't talk about it. It's also Warner Brothers, so I probably won't be able to talk about it after we land it, but it'll be my favorite secretly. But
Before you say that,
no, I
so
think my
explain what you just said. Why is it that you won't be able to talk about it after? Is it because it's a buyout or something, and you guys are in a show? Like, what is there a reason why you won't be able to say, "Hey, we did that"?
yes. So Warner Brothers does a lot of buyouts, and when they do that, it's kind of sacrilegious to speak about like certain things that land within the trailer community. Like there have been some trailer music companies that have completely been blacklisted because they've spoken about a placement and like the work that they did and how they got it. So we're very careful with the specifics that we share and what we've done on things, and if some companies like don't want you to share uh what like that you did that,
That's that does it
if
does
that
make
makes
sense.
sense.
It's hard. I guess it's hard though. I would think especially depending where your business is because your credits are everything, and so when you have credits that it's like, yeah, okay, I'm getting income, but if I can't promote this, then that's a challenge.
Well, yeah, we can put it on our website usually, but we can't like blast it on social media or like really,
Nice,
talk
gotcha.
about it. But it can be
Well,
on the
that's good.
website.
Okay, very cool.
So at least we can say, hey, we did this, put a poster up on the website. But yeah, there's definitely specific things where we're not allowed. But one that I produced that is probably my favorite so far is we did this like horror is like my favorite genre. This is my favorite time of year. And we did the trailer for I Know What You Did Last Summer, that new TV show that's coming out on Friday, I believe, for Amazon. And we did a kind of dark horror trailerized remix of Olivia Rodrigo's Brutal. And that was really fun to work
Oh,
on.
that's cool.
There's like taking a very like big kind of pop song that's in the everybody knows right now, and then spinning it into kind of a twisted, we put in a lot of like string elements and like big dark like cellos, and I don't know, it was a cool piece to work on and kind of transform that song and work with the composer
I
on.
love that.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So that was probably like the most fun I've had so far. We've had a lot of really great placements this year, but that was personally for me, like I had a lot of fun
Paige,
on
what do
that
you
one.
say to people when they ask, especially in the trailer world, about covers and whether they should do a particular cover? How does somebody even know what cover to do? Should they take a shot at it? Should they wait till somebody asks for it? Like, how do you advise people about making cover songs and pitching them?
Oh man. Well, let's see. We kind of get a brief and then do a cover, so we kind of wait. But then the stuff that doesn't land, we do end up pitching elsewhere. And we've done a few cover albums. It's really, I think, like, obviously the dark, kind of moody, taking something that's fast and bringing it down. I mean, what was the song that they just used in front of Black Widow? Was the Nirvana song, right?
Smells like Teen Spirit, yeah.
Yeah, Teen Spirit, you know, and the really only big like release that that girl had was this cover that, you know, the music supervisor ended up finding, and it worked for the tone of the film, and it was just like a dark, moody, slowed down thing. And I think those will always be popular, as kind of as much as we hear it, you know, it works. People like it. Uh, or just anything interesting. We've had to do a lot of really like interesting mashups of themes with like cover vocals. The brutal thing was more of like an instrumental cover, so we used the actual track and then kind of remixed it. So we didn't have to get like a vocalist on it, but we used a lot of like different types of instruments to kind of recreate the melodies. So that's always kind of fun if you want to try to like take a song, if you're a composer or an instrumentalist, and take the melody and kind of make something different out of it. It's always fun to experiment. That stuff's kind of always needed because it is technically cheaper for the music supervisor to clear, and um, which is a lot of times why there's a lot of covers. And there's also things that we call in the trailer business. God, I'm totally spacing now, but it's basically where a lot of like markets internationally, they can't clear the song international, but they can clear it here. So we have to kind of recreate the song, almost like not exactly, but enough to where it's like the same vibe, same type of deal, but it's changed enough to where it's kind of like rescoring it, but keeping it almost like it sounds the same, but it's completely kind of different melody so that they can do it internationally because they couldn't get the clearance. So we do a lot of that kind of
That's
stuff
really
too.
cool. So, do you recommend? I mean, the questions that I've had from people, which I don't know the answers to, is usually about what can they clear, and are there certain songs that is there some research they should be doing to know whether something is clearable or not. I mean, I guess if you're getting a brief, then you know um, something's more than likely clearable because it's being requested. But how do you advise other people to think about that type of thing?
Well, yeah, it can get tricky depending on who you're working with. I would say also like really look into the spaces. Marketing is a lot of money. They put in like big film industry. They put a lot of money into it. So most of the time they can clear kind of, unless it's a smaller project, like big films can clear anything that they want. Um, Smaller films or like things that are streaming. I mean, streaming is kind of getting up there into the big stuff now, but usually they'll want like a cover or an instrumentation or um, something on that side because it will be a bit cheaper because then they're only paying for like the writers or the publishing and they're not paying for the master. But I mean, yeah, it can get complicated. I think when you're thinking about your own music in my world, like covers are great to have. I don't think they're needed as much as people would think, though. Like we do covers for sure. Like I mean, we've done quite a few the past couple months, but it's not something that we constantly are getting like asked for pulls from our albums. It's usually something like a custom that's requested. So it's not something that's necessarily our
Gotcha.
catalog.
Really cool. Very insightful. Yeah, it's just good to hear. Just to hear um, how that works, and it does make sense in the trailer space. You're talking about much bigger budgets, so clearance is not as much of an issue as it would be if, hey, I did this cover and I'm hoping to land it in a movie. Um,
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to video games, a lot of covers because video game trailers are lot less money is spent on them. The marketing budget for video games is like minuscule, because most of the money is going into the animation side, which
right.
makes more sense. Whereas the film, it's already been shot, so they don't have to kind of create a separate piece. So it's Yeah, I think it's like thinking about who you're pitching to, first off. Like, you don't want to pitch like a cover of, you know, anything on the top 20s to a small project because they won't be able to clear it because the song's just too big. So even the like publishing or writer's side fee is going to be, you know, relatively large, even if it's just a cover, even if you're covering it. But if you're doing, you know, if you're covering something a bit smaller or pitching your own music, I think, yeah, I do think you should probably like think about who you're pitching to. You're gonna get people, you like make sure like shows that you're pitching to, if you're hearing, you know, that the show's using a lot of indie artists or that specific sound that sounds like your music, you know, I think doing the research is important. Because if a show's just using everything that's popular right now, that might not be who you want to pitch to as like an upcoming
Exactly. I
indie
love that.
artist.
Yeah, definitely doing your research. We talk a lot about imdb.com in our room because that's a great place to look and see um, who's working on what, and also sites like tunefind.com are good resources for seeing what type of music that show has been using, and then you can kind of see if that's something that fits into what you do. So real cool, Paige. Thank you for that insight. We've got about 10-15 minutes left. If anybody has a question for anybody or anything that we've talked about, you feel free to raise your hand. And we have Mac came up to the stage. How's it going, Macintosh? Very
Good. How are
good.
you, Eric? Hope everyone's doing well tonight. I actually wanted to comment. Paige, I believe, mentioned the "Smells Like Teen Spirit" cover for the Black Widow film. Fun, funny, quick little story on that. Actually, my company, it's called MusicClerk.com. We do a lot of supervision and clearance work and various other things in audio production. But our blog actually covered that right before it came out. We had been given a little bit of information about the cover was going to be part of the trailer and part of the campaign. And we put it out, and we actually ended up being connected with Malia J and some of her people, the artists, for it. So that was cool. I thought it was actually a great cover. A lot of times some of the covers, especially nowadays, of the more classic songs tend to get bad reviews or bad rap. Not anything to do with the production. Just some people just hate hearing old music redone for whatever reason. But I thought it was a great cover, and I just kind of wanted to mention that.
Very cool. I love the insight. I appreciate that. So this is your company, musicclerk.com, and it looks like you guys do all the things: production, supervision, clearance. How long have you been doing that?
Absolutely. We've been around as a company for about a little over 4 years at this point. Myself, as far as the music industry and entertainment in general, I've been doing it for a little over 20. So it's something that we tend to focus more on supervision and clearance as kind of a set piece, and then the production and the sound design, and even we actually have some old-fashioned Foley services that we provide through our partnerships. That's also kind of a set group that's separate. It all lives under Music Clerk, but those are kind of two different streams of services we offer
Well,
side
that's
by
very
side.
cool. And where are you based?
Actually based in the Dallas area, but we're also part of our team is in Nashville when it comes to the audio production and the sound design work. And oddly enough, by no coincidence, I'm originally from the
Very nice.
Nashville area.
Very nice. Oh, cool. Well, thank you for sharing with us, and thanks for coming up on on the stage. Happy to have you in the room.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me up. I've enjoyed listening tonight. It was
Oh,
actually my
cool.
first
Well,
time in the
welcome,
room.
welcome. Yeah, we're here every Wednesday, so feel free to come back and share anytime.
Thank you so
Nicole, you
much.
back on
Appreciate it.
stage?
I am. I'm
Oh,
driving,
no,
so bear with me.
no worries, no worries. How have you been? Can you share? Well, since you haven't been here in a while, can you reintroduce yourself to the room, and then can you share what you're working on? Anything that you can share? I know you do stuff that you can't talk about sometimes, but is there anything you can share?
Yeah, I can't really talk about anything right now, but generally is working on discovering new music, mainly from the newer songwriters that are looking to get into the game. Because through me, we do a lot of educating, um, while collecting good music for me to pitch through our catalog. Um, and that's it. I can't really be too specific. I mean, I'm pitching for a lot of TV shows, but they're about to. I don't know what's going to happen because there's going to be a strike
Yeah,
soon. Um, and I think that starts on Monday. So I don't know if you
we
guys
did
covered
not
that
cover
at
that, so
all, but
I'm
that might
glad you brought
affect
that up. We
some.
have not talked about that.
Yeah, so it really depends on I don't know, negotiate to what their terms are, and depending on where the project is, it might affect some, while it might not affect others. And really, um, as far as like getting into pitching, I would just continue to pitch during the strike because it might be a good time where other music supervisors might be looking for music and not touch more downtime than normal.
Yeah, it's
So
something I actually I
yeah,
didn't know that it was starting on Monday, but I've been paying attention to like the IATSE stories and which is really insightful. Like just seeing kind of the crew members talk about some of the conditions that they work under and the overtime and the weekend work and the lack of lunch breaks and how things really.
oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that needs to happen, and unfortunately, we might get hit a little bit, but it's worth it if the end goal is accomplished.
I agree. I mean, at some point, we don't have a union, but we do have stories and issues as well. And at some point, just hopefully will spill over at some point down the road where we can talk kind of just about music and composers and songwriters working in the space. Um, it is actually cool for me personally. It's cool to see the power of that type of organizing and getting everyone who's involved in making these awesome stories happen, making sure that they're all taken care of, and um, that has to spill down to the
Yeah.
musicians and songwriters as well at some point.
Well, Eric, I think we're legally not allowed to unionize as composers and
Interesting. Why?
lyricists.
That's
Um,
I'm all ears on this. Why do you say legally? I'm not objecting. I'm really ignorant about this. I'm actually inquiring.
yeah, no, there was a court case involving, I think, Elmer Bernstein suing Universal Pictures in I want to say it was 1974 or 5. Um, Let me see if I can pull up this article. It was on just like this huge talk about it on Perspective on the Facebook forum for like composers and lyricists a couple weeks back, where Hans pitching in on it. I'll see if I can
Yeah,
find it and
if
come
we don't
back.
get it today, please DM it to me or something. I would love to to talk about that and just read more about it because I'm very interested in this space. When we talk a lot of just about um, just kind of songwriter, musician rights, and kind of a lot of times, we're asked to do things for really low budgets, or sometimes it seems like the music budget is the last thing considered in a lot of these big things, and so I'm actually really interested in some of the different factors that go into those type of things. So I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. Cool. All right. If there are any questions, feel free to raise a hand and come on up and share or ask. And otherwise, let's look and see. Let me recap a couple of different announcements while we're doing that. Right. If you want to be included in the brief, oh yeah, I had a good question from Shelby. So let me bring her up to the stage. If you want to be included to the brief that's going out for Epic Hip Hop Cinematic Hip Hop, make sure that you are on our mailing list. That will be going out tomorrow, and we'll be collecting music for that over the next couple of weeks, and then probably have a listening session with the creative director that requested it in the first week of November. So if you're not on our mailing list, you want to go to controlcamp.com, CTRL camp.com, and make sure you're at the very bottom of the homepage. There is a form to just add your name and email address. That's the only information I think that it asks for, and that'll ensure that you get briefs like this. And Paige did say earlier, and I'm actually going to put something in the email as well, that they are looking for people who can do 90s hip hop beats, instrumentals only. It's included in some of the projects that they work on. So if that is you, also you can check in here for more info, or pay attention. Or make sure you're on our mailing list for more information about that as well. Shelby is on stage. Shelby, you had a cool question, so feel free. How are you doing? Oh, Shelby, can you hear? If you and then you can't hear, if you can't hear me, you're having that same clubhouse thing. You actually have to go back to the audience and come back in. Hold on, I'm gonna move you back. If you could not hear when you're on stage, Shelby, then you have to kind of go out of Clubhouse. It's a Clubhouse bug. If you didn't hear anything when you're on the stage, go out and come back in, and then raise your hand again. So I do want to. She messaged me in the back channel her question, and I thought it was nice the way that she did it. So I want to give her room to ask. And while I'm doing that, let me review any other announcements I was going to make before that. I didn't see her come back in. Where are you at, Shelby? If you're back in, just raise your hand again. Okay, in the meanwhile, we'll wait just a little bit. Don't mind me. I'm looking through notes because I know there was something else. I mean, we do have an announcement to make, but I knew there was something else I actually wanted to say. I talked about we may be doing a music listening session on Saturday. We're definitely going to try to do a film score with Matt Head. And I see, Matt, you did send me that link, so I'm going to look at that when we get off. I appreciate that. You found that fast. Did you remember what name did it
I
say,
try.
Matt? What was the person's name?
Writer
What you
or the
sent me?
composer?
You said there was a particular person that objected to it?
Yeah, well, there was a lawsuit. So this actually, the one I sent you is about some more recent stuff, but it kind of like quickly glances over. But basically, there was just something saying that uh, in said like lawsuit, I think Elmer was suing Universal to try to get more money from a thing, and I think also trying to defend his publishing. And it turns out, I guess, in the long run, that really hasn't worked out well for us. As I guess for like anyone interested in the audience or whatever, like generally, if you're a composer on a major motion picture, you you don't do a buyout. Though, like Netflix had gotten some heat for trying to buy out the writer's share from composers. Um, but it's generally assumed that if you're doing a film score or TV score, that you're giving away your publishing to the production company. And Elmer was pretty upset with that and decided to sue Universal. I think he did okay in that suit, but part of it, part of the definition of composers being like freelancers or something in that suit has led to an inability legally for us to unionize since,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
as far
Wow.
as I understand.
Very, very. That's deep. I'm going to look more into that. I'm so glad you shared that. And I'll look more into that, and then we'll that'll be a something we'll talk about in future conversations. Shelby, are you able to hear or speak now? Nope, it still did it. Sorry, Shelby. It looks like the clubhouse did not fix your audio. It's not you. Oh, you can't hear me anyway, probably.
Which, by the way, does everyone here feel that composers should own their publishing for music that they wrote for a film or a TV show?
Oh, that's a loaded question to ask at 9:51 before we stop at 10 o'clock, Matt. Nobody's jumping taking the bait. What's your thoughts, Matt? I'm gonna have you here first.
Yes.
Uh, what about?
No, I mean, I feel like the only justification for it is that the music wouldn't have been written without, that visual medium kind of inspiring it. But besides that, it just seems like it doesn't make
I
any
guess
sense.
I mean, what about the portion where music? I mean, that the publisher share is set aside for that for publishers who are actually, if you're not pitching your own stuff, if someone's actually pitching or finding you or putting you with the film producers or directors or other people, then that share is been set aside, for them. Do you feel like that's an overreach or no?
I mean, I think that can make sense. It depends. I mean, the whole point of, a publisher share in the first point is so that someone else can financially claim your music, right?
Very true.
So it was invented for that reason. Otherwise, it would truly just be a percentage of who actually wrote the music.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, you're not gonna get any objection here. I mean, I think a lot of what we do is based on something that was originally created to take as much credit away from us as possible, and now we're just trying to get as much of a normalcy or something, some fairness in a system that was probably built unfairly. But I'm also not a history person, so somebody much more qualified can we can talk to more of the history of publishing in the U.S. and how that works. All right, we are wrapping up in like 7 minutes. I'm sorry, I was trying to hold out for a question. Um, Shelby is in the audience. Shelby Jenkins. She actually was asking if anybody on the stage was looking for intern opportunities or administrative assistant opportunities, and she did it so respectfully. She came in. She didn't raise her hand and jump on the stage. She actually went to the back channel and said, "Is it okay to ask these type of questions?" And I thought that was really cool. And so, if you see Shelby, unfortunately, she's got the same clubhouse error that some of our moderators had, where they're not able to. She's not able to speak or um, be heard. But if you see her, feel free, give her a follow or send a message if you are in need or looking for interns or admin. At least check her out and kind of see what her qualifications are. I just wanted to give her a shot to come up and ask the question. So sorry that did not work. All right, before we and also like before we wrap up, we're not doing a after party. I want to thank everybody who is on has hung out on the stage all day. I do want to make an announcement just about where Control Camp is. For the last couple of weeks, it's been kind of me here. We've all been pulled in a lot of different directions, but we also have been talking about kind of where this room goes. So Steph, Daraj, and I kind of all came together and kind of this whole uh, we've talked for the last few weeks about kind of where we go. And so the pandemic gave us this time and space to kind of create this really cool thing in a time where we really needed connectivity and community. So we didn't really even anticipate how strong the support systems, the friendships, and everything that would come from building Control Camp. And so we've really all enjoyed kind of hosting these rooms each week, bringing this opportunity to talk with film, TV supervisors, ad execs, sync licensing professionals all together, fostering conversations, building empathy, all the things that this has brought for us. As with all things do change and times change. And so we've had to change with it. The world has started opening back up again. We're finding time becoming more scarce. Responsibilities are getting more serious. And so we've been trying to figure out how a way to make sure all this cool things that we created doesn't fade away as a result of all of us getting pulled. So I'm happy to say going forward, I'm going to be assuming the main role of development and leadership for Control Camp, for kind of steering us where we go, organizing these conversations, building kind of the next phase of this Control Camp community, which will eventually be off of just Clubhouse. It'll be find its own home on the web. So you might see less of Steph, you might see less of Daraj in the rooms. They're definitely supporting from the sidelines. They will definitely be coming back and contributing meaningfully. We'll be checking in with them from time to time about the stuff that they're working on, all the exciting things they're doing, and bringing you some of the opportunities from some other stuff that we're working on. So things might look a little different going forward, but we're still growing and moving, and we're all really united in our excitement about the future of this. And so I'm personally looking forward to kind of bringing you more of these conversations, what we're doing now, what we're doing on Sunday with Matthew Head, and future listening sessions, briefs like what we're doing with Cinematic Hip Hop for the LA agency. So stay tuned and listen for all of that. But I just wanted to kind of keep all of us informed about some of the changes going forward. And if anybody has any questions or thoughts about that, you can always DM me. My DMs stay open. But I just want to say I appreciate all of you being here. I was thank you all, Psychosis, Paige, Ian, both Matts, Matt Moss, Matt Wang, and Nicole for kind of hanging out with us, and some of the other speakers who had to jump off, Atik, earlier. Thanks for making this convo really cool today. And stay tuned for what we are bringing this weekend. We appreciate y'all being with us.
Hey, brother, congrats, and have a great week to everyone. Stay productive.
Appreciate all of y'all. Y'all have a good week, and we will see you again. No after party today. I have to be working on a brief, unfortunately, but we will be back this weekend, and tune into your email to see what's coming.